anticipating the brother from Puerto Rico would be here as well. I'm sort of scrambling. And sisters, I want to thank you very much for tuning in to Africa Live. This is Omali Yeshitela. I am hosting the show on today. We're going to have an extraordinary show today. As most of you have to be aware, on October 13th, Friday, this year, just a couple of weeks ago, there was a multifaceted assault in Paris that resulted in more than 400 casualties. More than 29 people were killed as a consequence of an assault on various locations, sites in Paris. And since that time, there has been a stream of messages of condolence and concern to the people of Paris, and there has also been declaration by everyone from the Pope to the President of the United States and a variety of other European unions that civilization itself is under assault as a consequence of what happened there in Paris. We want to talk about that. And we'll be joined on the second segment of the show by Louise Kinshasa, who's in London, England, who has had lived in Paris for a number of years, and who is actually from Congo. He's in England now. We'll have Glenn Ford, who is the executive director of Black Agenda Report, with us, and Penny Hess. And we want to explore this whole issue of what happened in Paris and investigate the cry that's being made by many people that we should pray for Paris. So, but right now we have with us in a very important discussion Edmund Kelly Silva Jr., who is the Ali Nui Moi, the High Chief or King of the Kingdom of Hawaii. And we'll be talking to him in just a moment or two about the situation in Hawaii, the struggle of the people in Hawaii. And this discussion we're having with Ali Nui Moi comes as a consequence of a September 20th meeting that I attended in Moscow. It was a meeting that was characterized as a dialogue of nations and the struggle for self-determination. It was attended by a number of peoples from around the world who are engaged in struggles for self-determination. That included people from Ukraine, people from the Polisario Front in the Western Sahara, in North Africa, people from the Irish Republican Socialist Party, Republican Sinn Féin out of Ireland, people from Puerto Rico, from Hawaii, and I represented the African people at that conference as well. And while the Ali Nui Moi from the Kingdom of Hawaii was not himself there, his representative was there at that conference. And I thought it was an extremely important conference that Moscow was capable of hosting. It was hosted actually by the anti-globalization movement of Russia. And as most people know, Russia has become a significant player in the geopolitical scene of the world. And this conference was also designed to contend with the so-called a unipolar world that's dominated by a singular force, and it was promoting the rise of a multipolar world where various interests of the peoples around the world could be represented, and people would have an opportunity to speak for themselves. And as I mentioned earlier, there was an assortment of peoples there, and one of whom represented the Kingdom of Hawaii. And I'm really happy that we have now with us Edmund Kelly Silva Jr., who is the Ali Nui Moi of the Kingdom of Hawaii, which can be translated as the High Chief or King of the Kingdom of Hawaii. And I don't know whether you are prepared to talk about the Moscow conference or not, or whether we should simply go into a discussion of what the reality is in Hawaii and the struggle and history of struggle of the people of Hawaii. Are you?
Hello, Kakayaka.
Hello.
Yes, I am. I'm very honored to speak about the Moscow meeting that my Ali Mananui Landy Sinkin attended, and he came back with a very good report of meeting many people of like mind who themselves are working diligently and faithfully to restoring their nations as well, and looking for independence. And the report was good. I enjoyed the fact that the host there in Russia, in Moscow, was very attentive and very kind and very sincere in helping those who are struggling for the independence. And I thought it was good. So yes, that I look forward myself to going to Moscow one day soon. I have been invited to go back there to speak to them. Unfortunately, I've been here with my parents. I just recently lost my mother last month, and my dad is currently in the hospital. So we've been dealing with those issues. And it prohibited me from leaving Hawaii to go to Moscow to speak to the people there. Eventually, one day soon, I will. I also like to weigh in on the Paris situation, and my condolences and support to the government is there. The people have suffered bravely at the hands of those bent on causing mayhem and problems in a country that did not ask for it. Unfortunately, many countries don't ask for terrorism and problems to come. But when it does come, I'm always watching to see how the people there, and grateful to see how they come together. And when they come together, it warms my heart that they come together in solidarity to support those who have lost loved ones in senseless killings that happened there. You mentioned about Hawaii and our struggles here. That's a very lengthy discussion, I'll have you know. But the work is ongoing. It's a good work. The support of the people is growing more and more, and the support of other nations are growing as well. The issues of Hawaii is unlike any other country there, meaning that there's a lot of similarities, and you mentioned Puerto Rico and others, Africa and other nations. Everyone are now determined to be a nation unto themselves, because they feel that they can better serve each other culturally, in many respects, culturally and traditionally, as to who they themselves are. And I find that we as Hawaiians at Kanaka Maoli, we understand the land. We understand our culture, we understand our tradition, we understand the people. And when you have those qualities, it makes for a strength that is unlike others. Because when you understand what you have, then you move forward to the self-determination, knowing that you have an inherent right, an inalienable right to live in the land that was gifted to you. Anyway, do you have any specific questions, sir?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for that kind of introduction to this discussion. We'll be talking in the second segment of the show with some folk who probably have a different perspective on the French and Paris situation than what you've just expressed. But
Yes.
the issue is that there are so many people who make an assumption that there is a natural relationship between the U.S. Government, state, and Hawaii and the people of Hawaii. There are so many people who were born into a situation where Hawaii was considered simply the 50th state of the United States, and have no idea of the history of how Hawaii became connected to the United States, the means, the methods by which that was used, the legitimate historical leadership of Hawaii. And I think it would be important if you would share with our listeners just some of that history. How did the U.S. and Hawaii come to have the relationship that exists now? What is the history of that? What is the Hawaiian people? Who are you?
Well, thank you for the question. Again, that's a very lengthy, there'll be a lengthy discussion at some point. But my cousin, who was Queen Liliuokalani, was overthrown in 1893. And she didn't simply give up the throne just to say, here it is, without saying first that she temporarily is advocating her throne, which means that she was illegally and unlawfully overthrown. And who overthrew the kingdom? These were a handful of businessmen. There were businessmen, attorneys, there were Christians. This is just a background of who they were. And they loved the fact that the Hawaiian Islands soil was so rich in nutrients that their sugar cane, their pineapples, and many other things could grow very well. And it became Hawaii became a cash cow, if you will. And the issue of that I see in the kingdom being lost temporarily was simply over money, simply over controlling the natural resources of our Hawaiian Islands, its beauty, its location. When the United States came and overthrew the kingdom, they also saw ahead of time what it could do for them militarily. You have Pearl Harbor that houses the naval vessels, etc. You have now all the various branches of the military here stationed in the Hawaiian Islands. My people here have been bent and strongly in regaining our independence and telling the United States that they have no legal authority here. They have no legal authority because they're the occupiers of a nation that was simply stolen. When Hawaii was stolen, I want to say this to your listening audience, is that my people back then fired one shot. They didn't destroy any human lives, no Americans, nothing. There was no need for the military to even be here. No need for the military to intimidate the Queen. No need for the military to intimidate the people. The Queen simply approached things with the spirit of aloha. And she trusted then, who was President Grover Cleveland, to stand beside her in solidarity. I love that word. To stand beside her and to restore the nation. Well, he was ready to do that. Unfortunately, when he was leaving office, McKinley became the president, and he saw all the things that Hawaii would mean to the military of the United States and to the United States people as a whole. So being in the South Pacific Islands, away from the rest of the world, if you will, Hawaii has a direct line to Asia and different other places on the map. So today, I continue to work with the people, encouraging them to stand fast, to imua, which means to move forward, to do so in a spirit of aloha, without violence, with care, and with a spirit of aloha to move the nation forward. And case in point, today we have an issue with Wakea, which is Mauna Kea Mountain. It's a holy place. This is where the Hawaiian practitioners, the kahunas, would go and practice and pray and give thanks to Akua, God. And that place, that sacred place has now been on the stage of the world because they want to put a huge telescope there, TNT. The people came together in solidarity, and all they did was link hands, chant, and sing. And they have gained tremendous support and respect all over the world because of their position of nonviolence approach. My position as a king is to protect my people, is to protect them from harassment, from arrest, and whatever I can do to protect them, simply seeing throughout my nation that they have no authority, that this is our land, this is our home, it is not yours. We live here. Our ancestors developed these lands. Our ancestors gave this land, this legacy, to continue to perpetuate this land in righteousness and the things that make up the Hawaiian Islands, make up its people. And I thank you for the question. It's dear to my heart because Hawaii is actually a place where all nations of the world love to come, not because of its paradisical looks, but because of its people. And there's nobody on earth here in Hawaii that can represent the Hawaiian Islands better than the Hawaiians themselves.
Thank you so much for that. First of all, I just want to make an announcement for people who are listening that we are involved in discussion with the Ali Nui Moi, which is the High Chief or King of the Kingdom of Hawaii. And we are talking about the struggle of the Hawaiian people to become independent and free again. In a moment, we'll open up the phone lines, but our number here for those who want to join this discussion is 727-565-1599. Or we can be joined on Skype at Uhuru Radio. That's UHURU Radio. Or we can be contacted at djuhururadio.com for those of you who might want to participate via email. So I wanted to thank the Ali Nui Moi for that elaboration on some of the questions surrounding this relationship that the U.S. has to Hawaii. I think there's much more that people will be interested in and that I hope to draw out. But I do question whether or not Grover Cleveland was, had good intentions as what was suggested. I know that this was when we're talking about 1903, when the Queen was overthrown and the people of Hawaii turned into colonial subjects as opposed to the free nation that existed prior to then. But I'm just thinking about that whole time frame. I know that it was 1884 and 85 that the Europeans got together and partitioned Africa and gave different parts of Africa to different colonial powers. It was 1898 that the U.S., after the so-called Spanish-American War, captured Puerto Rico, Guam, Cuba, the Philippines, and various other territories. And then just a few short years after that, we see in 1903 the capture of Hawaii. And by 1915, we see a situation where France has carved up what we now call the Middle East and created the borders and things there. And in every instance, it seems like what we're looking at, the process of accumulation of capital and resources by Europe at the expense of other peoples. And Hawaii seems to fall into that category. It just seems to me that what happened to Hawaii was not extremely different from what was happening to everybody else around the world, and that gave the power and strength to the United States and Europe at our expense. And at least that's how we interpret these facts. I mean, if we took what happened in Hawaii in isolation, we may be able to say that it has something to do with bad choices made by the ones who followed Cleveland into office. But it looks like it was a part of a pattern that was happening throughout the world.
I'd like to weigh in briefly here. The Queen, my cousin, Lily O'Connor, did not give the Kingdom of Hawaii away willingly.
Right.
She was forced into vacating the throne.
Yes.
He wanted to prevent bloodshed because the U.S. military, Marines, were pointing their rifles, their weapons against the people. And she, being who she is, stood between the rifles and the people, and saying, "Aole, no, I will not have you kill my people, and my people will not fight you back. I will advocate my throne temporarily, believing that your president, your enlightened government of the United States, will restore me back to the position of queen." Well, in the memoirs of Queen Leokalani, I've read where she really believed that Grover Cleveland was her friend. And as her friend, she relied upon that friendship and that he would work with her. And some of the researches that I've been able to gather, and from others, it does show that he was there to work with the Queen at that time. As far as his intention in his heart, I cannot judge that. I can only go from what I've read, and unfortunately, we make assumptions based on the things that we see, knowing that history in itself has been tainted simply because when someone writes a history book, they're talking about their historical events and how they perceive things, and they can word it any way they see that will benefit them. Yes. So the history of Hawaii, again, was because of its natural resources, because of the volcanoes we have, the rich soil, and the fact that the people here in Hawaii themselves were just people that understood our culture and tradition, our land. Yes. They were not the type of people that could that went out and shot up anybody or cause war. It was not who they were. Yes. Anyway, when he's talking about France and he talks about other Western countries and coming in and taking part of Africa and so forth and so on, again, I believe there is a similarity that is pointed out with us and them. Again, colonialism, everything was to divide and conquer, to make that nation stronger, and everything was strategic. This is unfortunate that how people go around the world simply because they think back then that they can take what is not theirs. And today, myself and my Ali Manaunui and many others here in Hawaii and around the world are bringing to light that injustices. And that light is shining on those darkness, because today the effort of restoring the kingdom is going very well, and the respect of the kingdom is now growing even deeper. And so the good things are happening for us. Slow, but it's happening.
Can you tell us what will the restoration of the kingdom look like for the people of Hawaii? Hawaii, as you just mentioned, functions in many ways as a military installation basis for the U.S. The Hawaiian people, yourselves, have your land and resources expropriated. And the economy is essentially owned by outsiders. What will the restoration of the kingdom mean for the people of Hawaii?
No, thank you. That's a very good question. According to international law and laws of nations, we must restore the kingdom back to where it was before, and that's a monarchical government. We had a constitution, a monarchical constitution at the time, prior to the overthrow of King Hawaii. And a lot of people have not been governed by a monarchical government. All they know is the government that now overshadows the Kingdom of Hawaii, which is the United States. And what this means is that as we become more and more independent, we become more strong. We then develop the government according to the people, because it is my desire that once the kingdom is restored, to open up the forums, if you will, to the people, and to have them decide the type of government they feel will best serve their needs. It is my sacred duty to restore the kingdom back to where it was. I not only have the Hawaiian blood, I'm 75% Hawaiian, but I also have the royal genealogy, the Naupio line, which is the sacred line. And the sacred line is the highest line, and that is that sacredness that compels me to restore this nation back to where it was. And to that end, once that is restored, then we will open the forum for people to come and say to me, Al'inui Mo'i, we want our monarchical government, or we want a democratic government, or what have you. And that'll be up to the people at the time. But once it's restored, we'll have all the wonderful benefits of the kingdom. I created a plan called the Aloha Aina plan. And the Aloha Aina plan works in harmony with nature, works in harmony with the land, that everyone here will have an opportunity to grow their own food, to be more self-sustaining, clean up the ocean, or fresh water, or all these things are in place to move forward. It'll create jobs. It'll create a cleaner, healthier living. We have a high rate of diabetes and heart problems, medical issues, because of the foods that we've been ingesting in our system. And these foods are not good. We want to get rid of the GMO. We want to clean up our soil so that they can grow healthier and good food. So there's so many wonderful things already in place to implement for us. And so this is what's happening here.
Can you say, prior to European intervention, what was the system of land ownership in Hawaii? Did the people own land collectively, or was it owned by private individuals? And what does restoration of the kingdom mean toward the land and the sources and the relationship that the people will have to them?
Well, prior to the illegal overthrow of the King of Hawaii, and prior to King Kamehameha III, called the Mahele, when the division of lands, King Kamehameha III divided the land A portion went to the royal family, and a portion went to the people, called the Kuleana land. But prior to him, the lands were never owned by any Hawaiian, not even the royal family, because our custom, our tradition dictates for us to just be humble and to love the fact that Akua gave us this land. So the land was for all the people. Not one person owned the land. Everybody worked in harmony with the land. Until the missionaries and all these, a handful of these businessmen, they brought with them their ideology, their culture, and saying that, well, if you want people to know that you're rich and that you are the king, or you are who you are, you need to own land. And as you own land, people say, well, he's rich. He has all this land. Because the people then were told that if you own land, you have resources, you'll become more elevated in your status. These are part of the issues that, and the lie that that was told to my people, to the East back then, and to the people. I want to carefully say here that my my family, my ancestors, Iwi Kupunas, we call them, weren't always the wisest kings and queens. And they weren't, they didn't always make the wisest choices. They keep in mind that on an island, it's isolated. I'm not making any excuses, but we're isolated. You don't know what's happening outside of the world from these Hawaiian islands. And when they had an opportunity to embrace new cultures and new tradition, they were like little children. Oh, this is beautiful, this is wonderful. And because of that innocence, my people back then, they were exploited. And that exploitation brought new challenges. And these new challenges brought more and more problems until, but there's one constant thing here that I want to say is that although these challenges came, the people knew that the land of the people was perpetuated in righteousness, and that this land belonged to the Kanakamo'is, to the people, to Malama, and to care for all the days of their lives. That we knew. We knew that was true. We knew that we had to work in harmony with nature. We knew that we can take care of the lands better than anybody else, even the oceans that surrounded these lands. And these are the things that the Ali'is back then stressed. And therefore, back then we created fish ponds, we created lo'is, farmlands, and when all this was in place, the diseases today was not part of our culture. We didn't have all those diseases, even prior to that, when the whalers came here, they did bring their syphilis, gonorrhea, and all that stuff that nearly decimated the population of the Hawaiian Islands. But when the Hawaiians continued to eat their foods, their natural resources, they became well. They became immune to the diseases to some point. Anyway, I hope I've answered your question.
That was very helpful because that seems to always come with the assault on countries, the assault on the belief systems and things like that, that makes it easy for penetration by various kinds of exploitation. And this question of the land, Europe was rather peculiar in the sense of this whole notion of private ownership of the land. Most other societies and cultures did not experience that, and I was wondering about that, and I'm also wondering what that means, toward the restoration of the sovereignty of the Hawaiian people. I have seen some evidence, only slightly, where you see this of movement trying to develop in Hawaii, of the people of Hawaii actually talking about independence and restoring the sovereignty of the Hawaiian people, and I have found that extremely encouraging. And I think that part of what this discussion has to be about is attacking any kind of isolation that the struggle of the people in Hawaii may be experiencing, because you don't read about this from U.S. newspapers, generally speaking. And that's one of the reasons I thought the Moscow conference was so important, because there were people there from all around the world who knew nothing about the struggle in Hawaii, nothing about the people there. And so I think this is good. I'm hoping that there are people who would join this discussion. Our number is 727-565-1599, or we can be Skyped at Uhuru Radio. That's UHURU Radio. Or you can go to dj@uhururadio.com and connect with us to join this discussion by email. Can you say anything more, Alimnoe Amoy, about the actual conditions experienced by the people in Hawaii? What are the conditions of the people? Are they respected and treated respectfully on their own land and their own country by folk who you have to call interlopers? I know in different places around the world, especially in the Caribbean, we see where our people have become servants of people who simply come there as tourists and other things like that. And Hawaii is often held up as this paradise for tourists, etc. I'm just wondering if we have a similar situation there, where even the people.
We do.
Yeah, go ahead. Talk to us.
We do.
Yeah.
We do have that. We do have a similarity. I'll let the question. Not fully on their own land. The answer is no. Not in my view. They're not.
I'm sorry. They're not. They're not what? I didn't understand. They're not what?
I'm sorry. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah. They broke up for a moment, but I hear you now.
I'm sorry. It's starting to rain here, and I'm afraid we may lose connection. If we do lose connection, my Ali Manal Lanny Sinkin is standing by to continue the conversation.
Splendid.
Your question about, let me go back. Your question was, is my people respected in the land?
Right.
Well, I have to say no, because if they were respected, the land would be back where it should be, back to people. And I think that says volume right there. Because if the occupying nation truly respected my people and these lands, knowing these lands were stolen, they would restore it back to us, back to the people. So that is an easy question for me to answer. Again, the answer is no. Our people is not respected in this land because the thieves continue to occupy the land and continue to force us to move forward in our agenda to restore this nation. Whether we go through the United Nations, the World Court, or doing what we're doing, is constantly going day by day, moving this nation forward and educating the world of the atrocities and the loss of this nation. You also talked briefly about where we stand as a nation. I believe you said something to that effect, but not in those words. As a nation and as its king, I am faced with several things. There's people who recognize me as a king. There are many who, there's many who recognize me as a king, and there's others who do not. There's detractors everywhere we go. But people who came before me and others in other nations, when you believe and you're convicted of what you believe in, then you continue to move forward regardless of what is there, because you know that what you're doing is the right thing. Restoring this nation is the right thing, is the proper thing, is the correct thing to do. And I encourage all nations around the world to stand in solidarity with me and my people in helping to restore this nation, as they stood with East Timor, who now has their independence, as they stood with my dear friend, God bless his soul, passed away, Nelson Mandela, who became the president of South Africa, as they stood with other great leaders, Gandhi of India, goes on and on. These men were men of courage, men of conviction, and they were not necessarily the wisest men, but they had a strength of power and a will to move forward.
Let's see what
regardless of the consequences.
Let's see what this caller has to say. There's a caller. Caller, can you identify yourself and where you're calling from?
Yes, Uhuru, Chairman. This is Ann Hersham in Seattle.
Uhuru.
And Uhuru, I really appreciate this conversation. I'm part of the Uhuru Solidarity Movement. And it's so wonderful to hear straight from the people what they want and how we as white people can stop being complicit with our government and support them in their righteous and honest struggle to retain their land properly. I'm just very moved and inspired by the conversation.
Caller, did you?
Thank you.
Caller, how did you understand the situation with Hawaii early on? I mean, did you have any notion of a struggle or movement in Hawaii by Hawaiian people to re-achieve their sovereignty?
I had heard something a month or two ago, but I don't, I didn't know any details, and I really appreciate knowing the tradition of how they hold the land and that they have a plan to take care of the land sustainably when it's returned to them. So no, I had very little information. This is very important.
So Ali Nuimoy, is there anything you would say to the caller at all?
Aloha, I appreciate your aloha spirit, and thank you for coming into this discussion. This discussion is very sacred and very deep to me because we're talking about something dear to my heart, and that is restoring this nation back to where it was, where the air was clean and fresh and wonderful to inhale. The oceans was clean, the fish you could eat because there was no diseases. The land didn't have all its chemicals from the Monsanto group, the GMOs. We were a healthy nation. It is my goal to restore that healthiness back to Hawaii, back to the people. And when I say my people, I don't simply mean the Kanaka Maoris, the Hawaiians. I'm talking about all people that dearly love Hawaii and want to be part of the kingdom and to be proud, with humility, to be proud of this kingdom and its leadership, because the leadership is in place to move forward the self-sustainable living, to implement our Aloha Aina project, to work with other nations around the world. This kingdom has a plan to talk to the world leaders about peace, to bring peace to one another. The Hawaiians call it Ho'oponopono. We have now in our to-do list is to create and build a peace center here in the Hawaiian Islands. And by that, I mean that creating this peace center will bring the nations of the world here to find new ways to actually talk about peace and not about war, not about terrorism, but to deal with it effectively by first healing yourself and to move forward. The Hawaiians have been doing it for centuries, and it's worked in the families and elsewhere. I have sent letters to President Obama, to the State Department, to the United Nations, around the world actually, encouraging leaders to come to Hawaii, and that we can talk about ways that can bring about peace. And part of that peace is to restore the people, not just of Hawaii, but Puerto Rico and others, Africa and other places, restoring the lands back to the people, where it belongs, where it belongs. And that's part of the peace process. And in restoring the peace process and restoring the lands to the people who are more capable, because they understand the terrain, they understand everything there, because they live it, they know it, they love it, it's theirs. And as you restore that, you restore their health, you restore their mind, you restore their spirit. And that is what's important, and that is what I am and many of my people and the government, we strive for.
I think that's extremely important because there's an image that has been promoted by the forces who control our lands and our resources that somehow our becoming free and independent and sovereign people means that we intend to kill and destroy and maim all of those who have been a part of an occupying or a colonial power. And when in the real world, we haven't seen evidence of people who have become free doing that. We've only seen those who take freedom away, being responsible for the death and brutality imposed on people. Yes, the mayhem. And I think that what your statement does is reveal the fact that it is, generally speaking, the oppressed who just want to end oppression, and you can't experience oppression of the sort that we experience on a daily basis with our identities, our resources, our sovereignty, our lands being stolen from us. You can't be for ending oppression on the one hand and seeing our mission as to oppress somebody else. I just think it's extremely important what you've said in that regard. What I would like to know.
Thank you. Thank you. There's one more thing I'd like to add is that.
Go ahead.
There's a couple of things actually. When you allow corporations to have their way, because government, some tax breaks and so forth, to have their way, as they lobby for presidents or prime ministers or whomever, they become a power source, a power broker, if you will, and they continue to call the shots. Where with governments here in Hawaii, corporations, in my opinion, will not have a foothold on the people or on this land. That these corporations will work in harmony with the government to make sure that the land is free of all its chemicals, and the water supply is free of all its chemicals as well, and it's all natural. I believe that it can be done, and I believe that it's not too far off, because the work we're doing is leaning more and more toward that end. And I believe that as Hawaii becomes truly independent, we then can be a model for other nations to follow. And as other nations see, and that's why it's so important for this government, the King of Hawaii, to implement the Aloha Aina project. And I've mentioned that several times throughout this interview. And this project will, in fact, clean up much of this mess that the corporations have brought to these Hawaiian Islands and all lands throughout the world. What they do, they steal the natural resources, they steal the nutrients from the ground. The people are left decimated. They're left with cancer, health issues, all of this stuff that doesn't need to be there. Doesn't need to be there. And that is my mission. That is my goal, is to bring more of that to light, to bring in people of light energy, good energy, to help promote this, to help promote the Kingdom of Hawaii. And in doing so, we promote the proper way of life that we as people should be living, and not in fear of cancer, diabetes, heart problems, tumors, and all these things that continually plague us, not just here in Hawaii, but around the world. This is a huge issue.
Well, Uhuru, what I would like, Alim Moi, is
yes,
if you would, during the last 3 minutes that we have, perhaps tell our listeners what you would like for them to understand about the struggle, how they can relate to what it is that you're trying to do, contact information, that kind of thing. If you'd like to use the last 3 minutes or so for that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you for having me on your station, and to I hope that those who are listening will be encouraged to stand up and to make a difference, not just for Hawaii, but for themselves. That each time someone stands up against tyranny, against oppression, they stand up for righteousness, for things that are good. And in doing so, we become closer and closer as a human family. We enjoy each other as a human family. And myself as the Inui Mo'i, again, this is very dear to my heart, is that if the listeners would go to kingdomofhawaii.info, and they'll have access to all the stuff that we've been doing, all the letters that have been written, all the dreams and hopes and aspirations are all there for you to read. I would encourage you to read them, internalize them, be me as you read them, and let me be you to be the sponge to absorb what you're trying to read. And then we can be one in unity and in thought. I encourage the listeners to come to Hawaii and to learn what's happening here in Hawaii. I'd be very happy to come out and meet the people anywhere in the world to continue to promote the King of Hawaii and what we're endeavoring to do and are doing. This is, again, from my heart to yours. I encourage everyone to open their hearts, listen with their hearts, listen with the spirit of law, and realize that we, the Hawaiian people, are not different from you. We bleed, we cry, we laugh, we sing, we dance. We all have ambitions. We all enjoy the various holidays fast approaching. We enjoy birthdays, Christmas, anniversaries. We're not any different from you. The only difference is that our government, the Kingdom of Hawaii, was stolen by force, stolen because of our natural resources, stolen because the strategic area of where it sits, the United States wanted to exploit that for its military uses. These are the facts, and these are the reasons why we collectively come together and to restore this nation back to where it was. I believe Hawaii can be and will be a viable nation where other nations can look upon Hawaii as a model as to how we came to our independence in a way that is pono, which is good. Again, I thank you for inviting me to the show, and I'd be very happy to come on again at some later time.
I want to thank you so much, Alinui Moi, and I hope you will extend our regards to your family.
I will.
I experienced the difficulties that you must be experiencing as a consequence of the loss of your mother and the illness of your father. And so please extend to your family our condolences, and also to the people of Hawaii, our solidarity. We are with you. Thank you so much. Uhuru.
Thank you. Uhuru. Aloha.
Brothers and sisters, this is Omali Yeshitela, Chairman of the African People's Socialist Party. You're listening to Africa Live on Uhuru Radio. Coming up shortly, we'll have an extraordinary discussion with Glenn Ford from Black Agenda Report, Louisa Kinshasa, who is the Secretary General of the African People's Socialist Party, Penny Hess, who is the Chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee. We'll be discussing France, or what happened in France on November 13th, what that means for France, for the world, and call your neighbors and let everybody know that this discussion is going to be occurring, and we anticipate that we'll be hearing from you as well. So we'll be back with you in just a moment. Thank you so much. Uhuru.
And they will to be all come on the same. None of us are free.
The mics are down and you're open.
Uhuru, brothers and sisters, comrades, thank you so much for tuning in to Africa Live. This is Omali Yeshitela. You're on Uhuru Radio, and this is the second segment, the second half of our show. A moment ago, we had a great discussion with the Alinue Moi, who is the High Chief or the King in the Kingdom of Hawaii, where people are engaged in a struggle to win their self-determination. This discussion came as a consequence of a September 20 trip that I made to Moscow, where there was an international conference dealing with called the Dialogue of Nations and the Struggle for Self-Determination. I thought that was an important discussion. Many people know nothing about the fact that Hawaii is a stolen territory, that in 1903, the United States government overthrew a sovereign kingdom there and installed itself in an array of military bases and corporations. So that was very good. But now we have a discussion that I think is extremely important, where we have the benefit of the intellect and experience of Glenn Ford from Black Agenda Report, from Louise Kinshasa, who is the Secretary General of the African Socialist International, who's based in London. Glenn Ford is in New Jersey. And Penny Hess, who is the chairwoman of the African People's Solidarity Committee, who is in the studio with us in St. Petersburg, Florida. And since Friday, November 13th, there has been a lot of motion, a lot of concern stemming from an assault that was made with an array of weapons and at different locations in Paris. Paris, the iconic city of culture in France, which also is a place where at least the elite perceive of themselves as being at the top of the cultural chain in human history. And the assault resulted in casualties, more than 400 casualties, at least 29 fatalities, perhaps 30 fatalities by now. And we've heard expressions of horror from various forces, from the Pope to Barack Hussein Obama, to prime ministers and presidents of various European powers, and even some colonized, the heads of some colonized entities. And they're all really upset about Paris, what's happening in France. And we're hearing from Obama, from the Pope, that the assault in Paris was an assault on humanity, that it was an assault on the human family. And it was a form of barbarism that is unparalleled, or nearly unparalleled in history, and the worst thing that's ever happened in France. So I think that it is worth some discussion, because right now France is under lockdown. Their 3-month state of emergency has been declared, where the French state has the ability to stop any kinds of demonstration, mass gathering that it wants to. It has closed down the borders. Many of the European states engage in shutting down the borders, and this is something that's really significant, if only because of the huge number of immigrants who've been forcing their way into Europe as a consequence of the US and European-inspired violence, war, mayhem that's been created in Syria and various other parts of the Middle East. So it seems that it would serve us to try to understand what is going on. Subsequent to that, on the 20th of November, just 7 days to the day, there was an assault on Radisson Hotel in Bamako in Mali. And there has been, through an extremely serious stretch, I think, an attempt to draw a direct connection between what happened in Paris and what happened in Mali. And in Paris, of course, there's been a declaration that is the Islamic State that has done this. And there are hundreds of people who have been, there have been hundreds of raids in France and Belgium since that happened. And there is a mass willingness among the people, European people, the people in France not being an exception, where they have, according to polls, more than 84% of the people would give up their freedoms and independence for the sake of security. And It seems like a lot of fear mongering is happening around the world, and the world again is being asked to pray for France, pray for Paris, and that's not only the Pope. Let me share something with you that panelists, because I just want us to have a discussion. That this is from the Wall Street Journal on the Saturday and Sunday, November 21st and 22nd issue. And the title on this cover page on the review section, where there's a graphic, a huge graphic, a half page in color, with the world, with what a world globe looking like a bomb with a lighted stem, a lighted fuse attached to it. And the headline, The Crisis of World Order. And the lead-in says that after Paris, Islamic State's rise and Syria's agony are shaking a weakened Europe and the broader international system, writes Robert Kagan, the author of this piece. Can the US summon the resolve to respond? And the article reads, for several years, President Barack Obama has operated under a set of assumptions about the Middle East. First, there could be no return of US ground troops in sizable numbers to the region. And second, undergirding the first, the US has no interest in the region great enough to justify such a renewed commitment. The crisis in the Middle East could be kept localized. There might be bloodshed and violence, even mass killing in Syria and Libya and elsewhere, and some instability in Iraq, that the fighting and the consequences could be contained. The core elements of the world order would not be affected, and America's own interests would not be directly threatened so long as good intelligence and well-placed drone airstrikes prevented terrorist attacks on US soil. Even Islamic State could be degraded and contained over time. These assumptions could have been right. Other conflicts in the Middle East have remained local, but they have proven to be wrong. The combined crises of Syria, Iraq, and Islamic State have not been contained. Islamic State itself has proven more durable and capable, as the attacks in Paris showed. The Syrian conflict, with this exodus of refugees, is destabilizing Lebanon and Jordan and has added pressure on Turkey's already tenuous democracy. It has exacerbated the acute conflict between Sunnis and Shiites across the region. The multi-sided war in the Middle East has now ceased to be a strictly Middle Eastern problem. It has become a European problem as well. The flood of refugees from the violence in Syria and the repression of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's regime have rocked the continent and overwhelmed its institutions. The horrific attacks in Paris, likely organized and directed by Islamic State from its base in Syria, and the prospect of more such attacks threaten the cohesion of Europe, and with it, the cohesion of the transatlantic community, or what used to be known as the West. The crisis in the periphery, in short, has now spilled over into the core. This is the Wall Street Journal, not the Burning Spear. And it's a statement of alarm by a leading thinking representative of the white ruling class on the one hand. And of course, it is a statement that's designed to push people to certain kinds of conclusions. But I think, I don't think it's unreasonable and irrational to talk about the crisis of world order. And it seems to me that what happened in Paris is just a punctuation, the most recent punctuation of a crisis in world order. So I want to throw that out there as a beginning, of course, not limiting anybody to how we should discuss this question. But what do you think, Glenn? Are we looking at a crisis of world order with what we see in Paris? How should we understand Paris?
Well, of course, we're looking at a crisis of world order because the global superpower, the United States, is waging a war against world order, against international law, against norms of conduct between countries. And Vladimir Putin put it very eloquently when he spoke before the United Nations, that his country's mission in Syria is to stand behind international law and the rights of sovereignty and self-defense that Syria has, and against the proxy war that's being waged by Europe in almost its entirety, and of course the United States against that sovereign nation. The United States, at this stage in its decline, finds that it cannot compete according to the rules of the game, legal rules, or even the economic rules that the capitalists set up for themselves. And so it breaks all of the rules. It attacks world order at every level. And at the most fundamental level of international law regarding what is war. Under the UN Charter, the greatest crime is waging war against peace. That's it, war. The United States has attempted to impose its own fake, made-up fantasy doctrine of humanitarian intervention that says that throws out all of the rules of war. That is, you only make war in self-defense, and it is a last result, and you cannot carry out hate aggressions against other countries. So it throws it out and says that the U.S. or anybody who has the power can intervene and create regime change and launch military attacks on any other country if it just declares that the leadership, the government of that country presents a danger to its citizens or is somehow not fit to rule based upon the aggressor's definition. That is the wiping out of law and order in the world, and that is U.S. policy. And in fact, that is in its most articulated yet form, that is the Obama doctrine. That's his legacy, and it's a legacy of world disorder and raw power. And so, yeah, the world's in crisis. As big a crisis as the superpower can create.
Well, listen, Comrade Louise, we're told that we should pray for France and that humanity itself is under assault, that the attacks that we just saw in France is just one of the worst things that's happened in recent human history, and that France, of course, is that symbol of civilization and culture. And this attack on France is an attack on civilization and culture. Well, I know you lived in France for a number of years and have experienced directly the civilization and culture of France, but also just the work that you do in Africa and other analyses available to you. I mean, how do you see France? Should we all be genuflecting in the direction of France and praying for France, following the leadership of the Pope and Obama? Is France this place that Hollande claims it is, this center of human civilization?
Well, Thank you for having me on this very important program. Basically, for Africans, for Arabs, for oppressed people in France, those who live in those housing state or projects, as we say in the US, if really there was any camera or hidden camera, I won't be surprised if a lot of people there, will tell you they have no tears to shed for France. Because every day for oppressed people in France, they know it's police brutality, police killing, police harassment. This is an everyday life of Africans here. And a lot of people also remember what France is doing in Africa. No, just in the summer, I think July, I was in Paris, where there was a demonstration against French invasion of Central African Republic, where African girls, underage girls, have been raped by French soldiers, and French soldiers filmed their rapes, and they put that on the YouTube. So they've been doing things like that. And Central African Republic is not the only place where African troops have been committing brutalities. They are in Ivory Coast. And you remember they has overthrown the regime of the government of Laurent Gbagbo.
You mean French troops?
And the French troops.
Yes.
So they were instrumental. Without French troops, Ouattara would not be in power today in Ivory Coast. And they have a military base now in Chad. And Chad has been instrumental in Central African Republic. Nobody can come to power in Central African Republic without the decision of the African president, Issa Deby. And Issa Deby is there because France is definitely behind that. So just to say, Central African Republic, French are committing crimes there is no world news. And we already know the role France played in Libya. France led almost the overthrow of Gaddafi, and we don't know exactly how many people killed. 50,000, 100,000. Where are the pictures of terror they committed in Libya? They speak about what happened in France, but let's see what France has done. And the history is there to show that France can't claim to be victim of world violence or all these terms that we're using to describe what's happening to France, attacks on democracy or attacks on freedom and things like that, when French government is responsible for destroying our movement for freedom. Take the names of Africans who have been killed by France, right there in France itself. In 1966, the leader of the anti-colonial movement in Morocco, Mehdi Ben Barka, he was kidnapped in Paris. And up to this day, nobody knows where he was buried, where his body is. And this could not happen without the consensual participation or collusion of French government and the Moroccan government. That's in 1966. And in 1961, in Paris, on the 17th of October, there was a demonstration against the French war of colonization, or to keep Algeria colonized in France. Over 200 people were killed, beaten up, and thrown into the Seine River. This is in Paris. Not that very far from where the attack on France on the 13th of November happened. 200 people killed. This in the middle of so-called democratic country, people have so much freedom, and people were just demonstrating against the violence of French imperialism in Algeria. As a result of that, 200 people were killed. I can't even tell you about the number of people of Africans who have been locked up just for following our own resources to France. So-called immigrants, Africans coming from Senegal, coming from Mali, coming from all different places throughout Africa. And when we know that France has our money, something like 500 billion coming from the so-called French colonial pact, that forces us to have our money, our reserve currency under the French control, and France takes 65 of everything those so-called 14 African Francophone countries sell, and 25% France keep it for themselves as a commission, and only 15% is handed over to African government. This is a war crime by any standard. You still remember the January devaluation of the so-called CFA, the so-called currency that African 14 countries use? In January 1993, overnight, the French government decided that the CFA, this currency is used in 14 African countries, has to be devaluated by 100%. Just imagine, you wake up in the middle of New York, you go to the shop, and you're told everything in the shop is going up by 100%. How many white people they will have heart attack? You know, and that's what France did in 1993. We can't tell about what they did in Haiti. You know, for over 100 years, France forced the Africans in Haiti to pay them compensation because we fought them and won our freedom against slavery, and we were forced to pay something like $200 billion of present value. And Haiti, again, the French, they use the name Rochambeau. Rochambeau was the general that France, Napoleon sent to Haiti to put down our struggle for self-determination in Haiti. And they use the same name, the Operation Rochambeau, after that general that Napoleon sent that was defeated in Haiti. So to overthrow Aristide. And you know, just the spirit of revenge, you know, that's the one who love reconciliation in South Africa and other places, but they send their troops there and snatched Aristide and put in process, of course, in collaboration with the U.S. government, that has, you know, that continues today. Haiti is still destabilized today because of that participation. And I don't know if people may remember, France, I think in 83 or 85, they bombed the Greenpeace boat called the Rainbow Warrior, I think it was. They bombed it because these, Greenpeace activists, they were opposing French test of nuclear weapons, or basically they were opposed to French carrying out nuclear tests in the Pacific island. The French bombed that boat and killed it. That's a long time ago. That's in the 80s. And in the same region, where the Africans are located, in the island of New Caledonia, the French assassinated Elo Machero, the leader of the anti-colonial movement there. They say he was too radical. And 2 years later, they assassinate Jean-Marie Tjibaou because he used to be presented as the moderate. 2 years after, because he continued all sorts of demands for, you know, self-determination, they assassinated him as well. This is in the 80s. And we remember Sankara, you know, Mitterrand and Chirac were doing what they call cohabitation, sharing power. They assassinated Thomas Sankara. And in Cameroon, they assassinated Félix Mouillet. They poisoned him in Geneva. He was the leader of the anti-colonial movement there. And the French agent, posing as a journalist, poisoned him. And they killed Osemi Afam, another leader in the Cameroon, and they killed Ernest Owande. In early 70s, they, you know, he was decapitated, you know, by the French agent. So the crime of French imperialism in Africa is just endless. It's just huge. We can Spain, then they're just talking about that. So it doesn't make sense for Africans to shed tears for our oppressors. You know, it doesn't make sense. Africans have to keep several tears of our own freedom fighters. And France is not involved in the struggle to free anybody. France is involved in the struggle to maintain imperialism because France is a declining power. All statistics show that, you know, and the French themselves, governments know that. So if I may have had one more thing is that the French government is quite clear. The French government is a beneficiary, is the one who benefits definitely from these attacks, just as he benefited from the Charlie Hebdo attacks, because the force was all the time showing that he is the worst French president, always having low score in the whole polls, 13% before Charlie Hebdo. And then after that, he went over 50%. And now, just before these attacks, Marine Le Pen, for the first time, the press starts saying that she might win the presidential elections. And the election was coming up in 2 weeks' time before these attacks, just as it was in January during the Charlie Hebdo attack. The election was coming up, and François Hollande was not doing well because of these attacks. Now, 71% of his friends say he's doing a good job. So people are not talking about elections anymore. They're talking about him doing a good job. And as you mentioned in the beginning, he's the one now who's bringing state of emergency. Guess what? He brought state of emergency also in 2005 when there was African Arab rebellion against the killing of those 2 young Africans and Arabs who were killed by the transformer.
Yeah.
They were electrocuted. So, and the same emergency law they used in 2005, they're using now, has its origin in French counter-insurgency program against the Algerian independence movement in 1955. That's when the French brought that state of emergency. So it's quite clear that what they're doing now is against the struggle of colonized people. It's against any other. Basically, is to shut down any efforts for the colonial movement to come back to life again. You know, people come back to political life. That's what they're trying to shut down. So that's some of the things I can say.
So Louise disagrees with the Pope.
Oh, you definitely.
No, so we don't pray. Well, I should leave it there. So I want to thank you, Comrade Louise. I thought it was really important for you to be here, just in part because of some of the history that's there. And I want to now talk to Comrade Penny Hess and, get a feeling about that. We were talking before this discussion how in France there used to be this museum that Comrade Louise took us to many years ago. It was called the Museum of the Colonies. And it's not called a museum. They had changed the name by the time we got there, but there was this, I think it's called a bas relief outside of the museum that showed the resources coming from Vietnam and different places in Africa, all of them by various means, ships and by people who bear these things on their heads and shoulders, all of them bringing ivory, gold, etc., to France and to this place. And on the top of this heap was this rather rotund white woman who was France, right? And so all of the resources of the world going there, they used to admit it. This was the Museum of the Colonies. And I was talking to Penny, she said they've changed the name again. Now it's called the Museum of
the History of Immigration.
The History of Immigration. And at one time in France, this France in Paris that we're talking about, where human culture and everything is under assault, they even had at that museum like human zoos with black people who were brought from the continent, and thousands of people would come to watch us behind glass, as in Belgium and other places. But Penny, are you crying? Are you shedding a tear for Gay Paris? I know you lived in Paris for a while, and and you were once Catholic. So are you praying for Paris?
No, I'm not, Chairman. But I think that, the white people of France, the French, and all white people, but certainly in France, there's the legacy that, that Paris is the city of light, the joy of living, the highest pinnacle of civilization, knows how to enjoy life, etc. And all of this comes from the most incredible terror that a lot of which S.G. Loisy has just laid out, that France has done and is still doing. And I mean, that the streets and the palaces and the cathedrals of France are dripping in the blood of Africans, of the Vietnamese, of the Algerians who are also Africans, but and the Africans of Haiti and Guadeloupe and Martinique, and and the 14 so-called Francophone countries and its colonies and France's colonies all around the world. France was built as, it had Vietnam as a drug colony. It made billions of dollars on pumping opium and really building Vietnam into a center of opium and heroin production in the whole world. That's what, and that brought in something like 90% of the colonial revenues in the early 20th century into France, that a time of great expansion. When S.G. Loisy talked about that colonial tax that's still in effect in the 14 Francophone countries, that brings in $500 billion a year into France. I mean, if you just imagine what $500 billion annually staying in Africa could do, that goes to France. And in fact, Jacques Chirac, who was once the president of France, said, without Africa, France will slide into the ranks of a third world country. And Francois Mitterrand, who also called himself a socialist, like Hollande does, said, without Africa, France will have no history in the 21st century. It's completely based on, just ripping off all the wealth, the dignity, everything of African people. France was one of the largest slave traders in the world. It kidnapped and brought something like 1,600,000 Africans to Haiti, Guadeloupe, and Martinique alone. And there, infamously, Africans were worked to death. They were any resistance, and they were thrown into vats of boiling sugarcane and molasses, and they were tortured in every possible way. Yeah, Loisy talked about the torture in Algeria, the waterboarding, the electrical cattle prods to the testicles of men, and just everything that they did is just the most vicious kind of torture and terror that France has brought to the people of the world and still is today. And that without that, France would be nothing. It would have nothing at all. And I think that, that the people of France, the French, have to come to that realization and take responsibility for the fact that whatever you want to call it, Africans and Arabs who the French have lived on at their expense for so long are coming back and basically taking over France. I mean, changing, the character of what France is. And I think 2,000 or more of young people who have left France to go fight with ISIS and other armies in the Middle East, that today the Algerians, the Arabs, and the Africans live in, as you were talking about in the study earlier, live in they call it the banlieue, the suburbs encircling Paris, where they live in these high-rise apartment buildings, just in a police state there with no jobs, just complete poverty, a whole generation of Africans and Arabs who will never work. This is the conditions that, white people can close our eyes to. And we have to wake up to this reality and take responsibility for the right of African and Arab and oppressed peoples everywhere to their national liberation, that we owe reparations because everything that we have is stolen from them. Everything that we have comes from them. And that without that, there will be the chickens coming home to roost. There will be the peoples of the world coming back to the center of where their stolen resources are and waging a war, basically responding to the war that France and U.S. imperialism has carried out against them for so long. So we're seeing, just the inevitable course of history.
So our phone number here is 727-565-1599. That's 727-565-1599. Or you can reach us at Skype, Uhuru Radio. That's UHURU Radio, or at DJ@uhururadio.com. And I think we've got an extraordinary panel here. Everybody can see that from what we've heard already. And I just want to say that that the African People's Socialist Party and the African Socialist International, the larger international organization that we are part of, is a revolutionary organization. And our objective is to take power, plain and simple. We experience ourselves as an oppressed nation that has been dispersed around the world. We're in all of these places that we've just talked about, France occupying and extracting value from, and we're here in the United States. Our objective is not simply to have a discussion to analyze this. We're talking about taking power. And many people around the world are trying to change the relationship that we have with empire, with imperialism, whether it's France, whether it's the United States, whether it's the combination of the different forces that control our lives, that have usurped our sovereignty, our dignity, and our resources as a people. And when we see what's happening in Paris, what just happened in this instance, because anybody who's ever been to Paris knows that Paris is Mississippi. France is Mississippi. I've seen it. I've experienced it. I've seen the roundups of people there. I've seen the first time I visited Paris, I was on a train where the train had to stop before coming to a complete stop in the station. It had to halt prematurely because an African woman had thrown herself on the tracks. And learned that it was a common occurrence, that the existence of African people was so dire that people were literally committing suicide by jumping in front of trains and things like that. So I've seen it, I've experienced it, and I believe that we have a right to be a free people, and we're not pacifists either. We know that the imperialists are not going to turn over the resources that they've stolen from us simply because we know good prayer or something to that effect, or because we make friends with the Pope or some other force like that. But we don't believe in terrorism as a comprehensive approach to like struggle. Terrorism should also be demystified. It's not the way terrorism is discussed in this country today. You think it's a country or something, a war against terrorism. You think it's a particular group, but it's not. In fact, what has happened is terrorism is being interpreted to be anything that scares white people, that challenges the social system. And increasingly, what we see is that America, France, and Europe are defining struggles against them as terrorism, where they can use the most extraordinary, most sophisticated type of weapons like drones that was mentioned in the Wall Street article that I just talked about, that I just read from. They can use Apache helicopters and destroy people, wipe them out, just like whatever it was they used in that house that they attacked in Paris the other day, where they had to use DNA tests to determine who the hell they had killed, because they fired 5,000 rounds of ammunition in the house and used explosives, etc. So they are not characterized as terror, but the people fighting against them are characterized as terrorism. And terrorism is simply a form of warfare, a tactic of warfare that has been used historically to demoralize a sector of the population. Some people, in my view, in the view of our party, have resorted to terrorism as a primary form of struggle, and we don't think that's wise. We don't think it's good. We oppose to terrorism not because we're crying for Paris or for the Parisians, no, any more than white people cry for the Germans who claimed they didn't know that the Jews were being stuffed in ovens. Nobody allows the Jews to get away with that explanation. No, we didn't know it was happening when all their neighbors disappearing all around them, etc. And white people, neither here in the United States nor in France, can pretend that they don't know that all these resources are coming from the rest of the world, that France is extorting and stealing resources. They see it on television. They see the police roundup happening on a regular basis. But we're against terrorism as a method of struggle because our objective is to take power. And we don't believe that helps. We don't believe that works. And there are a number of reasons for that. But we are not condemning people who are struggling using whatever means at their command. And when we say at their commands, we don't mean just the kind of weaponry that they may have, because they may not have Apache helicopters, but an Apache helicopter does not make someone not a terrorist, does not make a country not a terrorist, etc. We mean We mean ideologically, politically, organizationally, and also in terms of weapons. So they don't have Apache helicopter, they strap a bomb around their waist and they go into a crowded place where the enemy is located. So our objective is to take power. And considering that, this thing about the crisis of the world order and seeing an absolutely new world attempting to emerge is something that I think is really important. I think the Wall Street Journal is onto something here that we've recognized for a while. We characterize it as uneasy equilibrium, where there is a transformation, a fundamental change is happening in the balance of power among forces in the world, where the colonized, the oppressors are now assuming the initiative, even if not in an absolute organized and ideologically coherent way. That's what's happening. And definitions that prevail for a long period of time under white imperialist dominations are being seriously challenged. And the French and French civilization and all of that, France could claim that as long as it could put a muzzle on the people who they were colonizing, as long as the ones who were stuck in these so-called suburbs had no voice, as long as they couldn't get on television, couldn't get it in Le Monde and other vehicles, instruments of French media, that could be happening. But now people are discovering their own methods of communication. And I think we might have seen part of that just happen in Paris. So it's challenging. Everything that people thought was the right way, the culturally correct, and all these other things, all those things are under assault today by oppressed people who are trying to force our way into history. I think that's what's happening, and I think it's a completely challenging situation for white people in general around the world, and certainly for the white elite, for the rulers of this country. And what we just saw happening in Paris, I think, is again punctuates that reality. So, Glenn, everybody's talked a whole bunch, and you opened it up, and I want to throw this out, and no one should hesitate to speak to anything that others may have mentioned in their presentation. And I know we only got about 14 minutes or less left in this discussion, and it's a discussion that's much bigger, that demanded much more time than what we're giving to it. But Glenn, what you say?
Well, whatever hurt the Parisians feel, these are self-inflicted wounds, and the rest of the world is taking much, much worse punishment. Nigeria is the capital of death by terror, followed by Iraq, and that's followed by Syria. And France is complicit in all of those deaths in the real three places where terror is most likely to claim innocent lives. Some of that terror spills over because when you have a policy, and France is a partner with the United States in imposing a reign of terror and chaos in the world, when you have that kind of policy, it's going to be some spillover. You're going to get blood on your own shoes and within your own population. And that will happen with greater and greater frequency. But outside of the bubble of the United States, everybody in the world understands what the U.S. is doing. And I'll include in that United States bubble most of white Europe as well. Mm-hmm. But the rest of the world understands, the Syrians understand that a European poll conducted on Syrians, with Syrians, showed that strong majorities of Syrians believe that the United States created ISIS. They blame the United States for whatever ISIS is doing, and that cuts across the board of the political opinions of those Syrians. That is, it includes people who are anti-Syrian government as well as people who are pro-Syrian government, but they share the same analysis in terms of who's behind ISIS, and that is the United States. What the United States and France try to do is portray themselves as being blameless, as being victims, as things, that these things just happen to them. And it's really amazing how the French language after November 13th sounds just like the American language after 9/11, with these French people saying we are being hit because of our values. That's why they're attacking.
That's
us.
probably true.
Just like they're real values. But just like the Americans were saying that people are jealous of the United States. That's why they hate the things we have and the values. They're sounding just like it. We really are getting a lesson in how closely knit these Euro-Americans and these Euro peoples are ideologically because of their shared history.
Yeah.
And that the French, as one of the original great imperial colonizing and slave catching powers, that in fact is the legacy. That is the value that they hand to the world. And it's not the Statue of Liberty. It's the bloody sword and the ball and the chain.
Yeah. Well, it's also chumps that I say. I think is how it's pronounced at the either the beginning or the end of that thing. There's that obelisk that stands there in the middle of the street of the boulevard that was stolen from Egypt by Napoleon, dragged all the way back. This obelisk that stands there as a sign of French grandeur, and that was the colonial grandeur that we were talking about. Louise, say that again. Yeah, shot the nose. Shot the nose off the Sphinx. Yes, yes. So, Louise, I think that we are seeing a change in the balance of forces in the world in general terms.
Yes, definitely, and it makes sense that to see the force who are losing power, who are conscious that they're losing power. France itself is well aware. The main power in Europe has been Germany, although people usually present Germany and France as the two driving forces of integration and things like that in Europe. But it's been quite clear for some time that the French economy is more in decline compared to the German economy. And when you see what the French have just done, something we refer to this as a coup, but it's something we know, we've been saying for a long. What is clear is that the ruling class cannot rule as in their own ways. Right. And you begin to see when France, just the last week, they have done over 800 raids. And just in 1 week, the amount of calls coming from the French ruling guards saying that put all the refugees in refugee camps, basically in a concentration camps, give every single refugee a bracelet so they know where the person is, and anyone who is being suspected of being so-called jihadists has to lose his passport and his right to citizenship. So everything they think they're doing, and it just contradicts, exposes what it is claiming to be a line of freedom, and there is no act of freedom in an orderly season that they're passing at a fast speed. Everything they're doing is basically to contain, to downgrade, as I said, the ability of the oppressed people to move freely, to organize freely, and things like that. And just even the closing of the borders, they're all, the whole French political class, they've been calling for that. And this also extends to places like Britain, which is a reverse of what they are pretending they will achieve. So they have basically to accept that there is no greater France as it used to be, and there will be no greater UK as it used to be. Everything they're putting forward is now becoming for less, movement for less freedom, for less civil liberties, and things like that. What a way, what kind of logic is that? That you're going to defend what you stand for by attacking basically what you just standing for yourself. So on one hand, you say, on the other hand, you just cut down everything. So that's quite clear. And another aspect, and is the whole question of a terrorist. Who is a terrorist? Because you often say we are involved in the battle of ideas. And one of our key ideas is that not only are we oppressed people, but we are the future of humanity in the sense that our movement is a movement that's going to bring freedom to everybody. And the movement France and the UK and the US are, driving is a movement that criminalizes their nationalist movement. And I think this is a fundamental struggle that, everyone who's listening definitely has to make that decision to join the African National Liberation Movement, because we have to be able to say we have won the battle of ideas in the sense that it's clear, not just for Africans, but it's clear to the whole humanity that France was born out of terrorism, and everything they're doing is just a continuity of terrorists they've been practicing for 100 years. Humanity can't be fooled by anything like that, and this depends on our side. So that's something African National Liberation Movement has to react to.
We're gonna take a call now, Comrade Louise. We just have a couple of minutes, and I did want to have an opportunity to say something about Bamako, but let's go caller, identify yourself and say where you're calling from, please.
This is Mensa, Uhuru to the chairman and to all other comrades.
Uhuru, where are you calling from?
I am calling from, I'm currently in Las Vegas.
Okay, splendid. Yes, my brother.
And I think what it is, on this topic is, just like the comrades were saying, is that, it's like El Malik El-Shabazz was saying, is that the chickens come home to roost.
Yeah.
It's just that simple. And imperialism has to recognize that its substructure will be broken down, its structure, its superstructure will be broken down by those who they deem terrorists, but are really, what we should, I would say, and you can all can challenge me on this, would be the insurgency, those who are against the imperialistic structure, and so that's more what I have to say on that. And also, there is a consistent globalized fear mongering that happens. There's this global fear that is perpetuated by the imperialistic structure. So to subdue the people and subdue those who would be revolutionaries and subdue those who have a voice, to attempt to pacify them, to attempt to gun them down. So I would say to those there needs to be a more critical analysis or a way of finding out how the revolution should happen in different ways. I do not agree with terrorism in the terms of definitions as it has been defined by the superstructure of imperialism, but I do agree with some forms of insurgency and tactical revolution. So that's what I have to say.
Uhuru. So listen, we only have a couple of minutes. Louise, what about Bamako? What about what just happened in Mali? Can you say briefly, within the next minute and a half, something about that?
Yeah, we already have in Mali, Bamako, people who the white media refer to as jihadists, who already are involved in the struggle against French interests in Mali. And you also have to know that France went there under the pretext of saving us from terrorism. But what they didn't tell us that Mali is sitting on coal, copper, uranium, just huge reserve of wealth, and this is always removed from the sight of the people. And also, France is responsible for what's happening in Mali because France overthrew Modibo Keïta, and Modibo Keïta was somebody who united the Kwame to unite Africa.
Yeah.
And whatever happened in Mali 2 days ago or 3 days ago is directly linked to that. And another aspect of that, we know also that people who initiated the aspect of the struggle there, you have the Africans who are known as the Tuaregs, who are being oppressed by the new colonial regime in Mali, who also are struggling for the right to be heard, for the interest to be recognized, and they got the weapons, according to what the media say, coming from Libya, and we know who caused the situation in Libya. So if people are opposed to violence in Bamako, then let's oppose French participation as or French attack on Libya, because that allows some weapons to travel from Libya to come there. And then you saw the television, that hotel is not a place where ordinary Africans live. Most of the masses in Bamako don't live in that kind of luxury spaces. That's where you see the imperialists and people like that. That's where they meet, they do their deals and things like that. So people did also take that act. They recognized that they were involved in the struggle against the imperialists. As the chairman just said, we oppose terrorism as a main form of struggle, but we need to recognize what they did. It was attacking colonialism. And basically, our role is basically to bring what we believe is to be the real strategy and tactics of African revolution, so that it can be won to revolution as opposed to be won to terror.
Uhuru. Thank you so much. I want to thank everybody. Comrade Glenn Ford, Penny Hess, Louise Kinshasa. Thank you so much for this very powerful and important discussion. And this is Omali Yeshitela. We're signing off on Africa Live, uhururadio.org. Ease relate to.
Yeah.